I'm super excited to be here today with these two amazing panelists and good friends, Hermina and Harsha. But before we start, I would like to really thank the European Commission in collaboration with the Foundation Incyde and all of the other partners that have made possible this conference to promote entrepreneurship. And that's what we're going to talk about. So I just would like that you to give us a little bit of an introduction about who you are. And I would like to start by Harsha. Could you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Yes. Buenos dias, everybody. Namaste. My name is Harsha Bennur, and I am the Director of Technology Strategy for Industry ISVs covering public sector within the Microsoft ecosystem. So I cover state, local government, education, as well as health and life sciences partners. I've been with Microsoft a little over 21 years now. And, I'm very excited about working with the different nonprofits on trying to give back to the younger generation so that there will be more equal playing ground and diversity in terms of everything, both women as well as accessibility, etc., in the workplace.
Thank you, Harsha, for this introduction. And now I would love to give the floor to my good friend, Hermina. So please tell us a little bit about you.
Thank you so much, Bisila. Buenos días y gracias para la invitación. I would like to say that today I'm very happy to be joining you for an entrepreneurship and technology conference using technology because of the new world that we live in today. I am the founder of the Aspire Artemis Foundation. It's a foundation based here in New York that promotes entrepreneurship and the use of technology in innovative ways through the inclusion of arts and culture to get more inclusion into this typically considered male-dominated STEM field. So for the past 5 years, I've been working mostly with disadvantaged young people across the globe to get them skills and training necessary so that they are able to access technology in new and innovative ways. So thank you so much for having me, and I'm very excited to be part of this discussion.
Hermina, since you are here, I want to pop up a question for both of you, but I want to just to line up, what is for you inclusion? I want to know from your perspective, Hermina and Harsha, what is inclusion? But Hermina, since you were just speaking about what your organization is doing in that area, I would like to know what is your own personal definition of inclusion?
For me, inclusion means providing an enabling environment for all diverse groups to be part of a process or environment or project in which they can thrive. So for me, what that means is that they are given agency, voice, and participation. So not only that they're in the room, but they are able to get access and have their voices heard in the room and be part of the participation of whatever the process is. For example, for disabled communities, we find situations where differently able populations are unable to access arenas because to be in full participation because of the technology is not conducive to their participation, or whatever the stumbling block may be, their full participation is not made in an accessible environment, whether it be access to technology platforms, sign language, or facilitative infrastructure to allow their full participation. So inclusion is not only being in the room, but being able to fully participate when there. That was a bit long, but for me, inclusion just means full participation and voice.
Harsha, I would like to know what is your vision, your particular definition of inclusion?
Yeah, I think, I honestly think that what Hermina said, I completely agree with a lot of that, right? Because I feel like there are multiple things that we need to take into consideration. There is the diversity piece, which is basically making sure that there is an equal representation of different populations. For me, that is diversity. So there are three things I actually think about. One is diversity, one is inclusion, and the third thing is belonging, right? So diversity is making sure that, yeah, the numbers are all correct. Inclusion is making sure that they feel that they have equal opportunity while they are in the environment that they are in. And if we have diversity and inclusion together, that is what will foster belonging. And so for me, inclusion is about not just making sure that the numbers are there, because I think in fact a couple of weeks ago I did a whole talk about women and women of color, for example, or even intersectional populations. This is not necessarily women, it's actually women, LGBTQ, immigrants, based on like race, caste, age. So it even affects men for that matter, because there is the whole multi-generational workplace. So how do we make sure that everybody feels included, right? Because what happens is in technology, especially in technology, I feel like it's more important. I mean, if you think about the kinds of problems that we are going to try and solve, it becomes more and more important to cover the entire rainbow of population that's going to be using this technology. So that's in a nutshell what inclusion is for me.
Wonderful. I love your answers, and I could not agree with you more about it. But now let's go deeper. And I would like to ask Hermina, what do you think are the benefits towards diversity, inclusion, and intersectionality in the tech field? What are the programs that Inspire has created particularly?
Mute.
Sorry about that. Always have to, in this new world, I always get confused. Sorry about that. So for me, diversity, inclusion, and intersectionality in the tech field, it's more about allowing for a human-centered approach to technology that takes into account and reflects the world that we live in currently. So technologies will then build upon the diversity of whatever the world is. So honestly, in media, if I take media, for example, you usually see people represented in the room, and you get a sense that this is what the world looks like, but it doesn't. And for the tech field, when you design technologies for people from diverse backgrounds, whether they're disabled, whether, as Harsha pointed out, they're from LGBTQI or males or female. These people need to be in the room when the technologies are being designed. If not, you're going to design something that's not going to function for the people and your target audience that you want to be represented. So there was a study that was done where a company took data of people, whether they were hiring women and people of color. So in that study, for example, they found that there were women, and oftentimes those women were in managerial, not non-managerial roles, so secretarial admin roles. And they did have people of color, but they were often not women. So as Harsha pointed out, intersectionality plays a big role in this as well, because they did not have women of color in that organizations. So in essence, that's an intersectional category that's not taken into account. If you're designing a seatbelt for disabled population, and you're not taking into account the full spectrum of disabilities that exist, then you're not going to design a seatbelt, for example, that is going to fit every single population. So in terms of Aspire Artemis, when we think about inclusion, for us, inclusion is always having everybody in the room with equal access and equal skills and equal training opportunities. The problem we face in the world today is that people are disadvantaged before even getting into the room. So whether you give them access, it's not enough, because if they don't have the skills and necessary for them to thrive in that environment, then they're not going to be able to thrive. So we focus mostly on disadvantaged populations. We give them the tools that they need to thrive. We provide them with education. With our unique approach, we call EMI, which is we focus on education, mentorship, and internship. So that means we address the full spectrum of theory, policy, and practice. So they get the education and the skills. They get the mentorship, which is a support system that is there to allow them to get training while they're before the process, during the process, and after the process. So the full spectrum of the process. And then the upskilling part and apprenticeship and internship opportunities, where we place them actually in environments where they can practice those skills and the training and make use of the resources that we provide them with. And we work with visionary corporations, we work with governments, we work with the private sector, we worked with different UN organizations and UN member states. So for us, it's a collective action, holistic approach where everyone is part of the process, of the development process, of having a holistic approach to getting people ready for the jobs of the future.
That is really amazing, because as you said, people already in the start line, they're already disadvantaged. So you're really working to give them the skill set that they need to be able to be in the game, not in a situation of disadvantage. So I think that is remarkable, the work that you do with Inspire. So now we love to just ask Harsha, what is the role that you think that STEAM plays in entrepreneurship? What is the link, and how could be another level?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, because I was actually thinking about how far we have come, right? I mean, we are this is like the new the digital revolution, if you think about it. And when about 20 years ago, when I had joined a startup, like it was an early phase thing, and or even when I was at Microsoft, when I worked with multiple different companies, when they had to build a solution or when they had an idea, at that time, the idea you couldn't just go there and say, okay, I have an idea, I'm going to go and start this, especially if it was a technology entrepreneurial idea, because you had to think through, where are you going to, who's going to write the code, where are you going to host it, who's going to help you host this, how much capex do I need to be able to host this, what are the there was just so much work that had to happen before that idea came to life, and even after the idea came to life, because once you've hosted a solution, then you want to do maintenance on it, you want to make sure that the lights are on, etc., and then you want to do all the other things. So there was a lot of stuff that was built around the business versus the idea. So it gave an entrepreneur very little time to focus on the idea itself, but they had to think about everything around it. Fast forward now, right, in the current day and age, my daughters, I mean, I proudly give this example to a lot of people, but when they were little, I mean, they were like 11 and 13 maybe, and they loved making slime, like using glue, etc. And they were like, oh, we want to sell slime online, and so it was so simple for them to create an e-commerce website, where they were still focused on like, what kind of slime I want to do, like Belgian chocolate slime, I want to do like bubblegum slime, all kinds of slime. And they were so focused on that, and they were taking fun pictures of the slime, videos of the slime, etc. However, the part which is the hardest one is putting it on the e-commerce site and making it have its own website. That was, even they did it. I mean, they just had to go research it around a little bit, but they were able to bring that website to life because they just went there, and because of the fourth generation languages, where they were able to go and create the website. And through that, they learned a little bit. They used Excel to be able to understand, what's the cost, and what's the revenue and what's the difference between that. They used SEO, right? They didn't know that, and then they understood what that means, but they realized, oh, what we need to do is create an Instagram page, a Facebook page, etc. But then, it was more about the idea versus the technology. And so the technology kind of moved off to the background, and it was more about, oh, my slime needs to hit these populations. They didn't have to figure out, where do I host it, what do I need to do, etc. And so I think that's where we have come right now. I mean, now in the real world, when I work with partners, or when my partners work with customers, it's really about really taking the power of technology and making sure that you understand how it can be used towards your main business problem and the main business pain points. In fact, like, for those of you who are in the technology field, you can see that Exchange server, which is what used to drive our emails, used to be a huge business. They were like people who prided themselves about knowing the ins and outs of that server, and have spent like their entire career getting email running and up and patched and etc. And now with the with Office 365 that Microsoft has, or like even like our competitors who have their own email systems, it's all in the cloud. So this set of people now had to go and reskill themselves to do much more higher level tasks, right? More difficult and value added tasks which help the business, versus having to go there and rack and stack servers, And so I think that's what where we have come in terms of technology. And it's really there. It's becoming easier and easier and more accessible. And so I think most of us are at the age where we have actually seen democratization of technology. And so that's huge. I mean, there is nothing that's going to be able to stop this newest generation of entrepreneurs, in my opinion.
You see, Harsha, I could not agree more with what you're saying. I've been 20 years in international business, and I remember how difficult it is to bring a product from one country to another. Right now, thanks to technology and the digital era, you know what, there is no borders, there is no frontiers. It has changed. The way that we manage logistics. It's fascinating. So I agree with you how for entrepreneurs, particularly the ones that we've been working, always going overseas, and it was so difficult before, it just eased the path so much. So I totally agree with you, because I experienced it personally.
Yeah, I mean, you will not believe this, because when the kids put their Sliminiacs website online, they received orders from Israel, Norway, and we were not prepared for it, right? Because we said, oh, like, so we are actually a global business now, so that's what they were, jokingly saying that in middle school, but that's how easy it has become nowadays.
Yeah. So thank you so much. And I would like that we talk now a little bit about women. And this question is for both of you. And when we break in the ceiling for women in technology, by your experience, how we could create more opportunities for underrepresented women to gain access to positions of leadership in STEM? Can you please give us their opinion? Hermina, we'll start with you.
Sure. I think this is, we found out that women are more underrepresented in the STEM field than we imagined before. In fact, because of COVID-19, we have actually gone back on many gains that we have had because of, especially in disadvantaged areas and in countries that don't have infrastructural means for them to access the technology and be included in the process. So for me, I think that women, when they see, in general, in terms, when they see someone who looks like them, that is in an area, they become more interested in that area in general. Because if you think about it, as a child, you dream to be something that you place yourself in. If you don't see anyone that looks like you there, you're never going to imagine going into that field or that area. And you don't even begin to dream, in fact, to have people, you'd say, why would I waste my time studying something that I don't see anyone who looks like me there anyway. It's going to be a waste of time. So it's all about role models, having role models from diverse intersectional backgrounds, the full spectrum of diversity represented, and also not only seeing yourself in those positions, but also having an environment that's enabling for when you actually do get there, that it is facilitative for your participation. So for example, we know that the typical work model has been designed again around males, because it was a system created for men by men. So we need to make work environments more facilitative to the life cycle of women. For example, especially in the sciences, I would say, and in labs for women, when they give birth, it's very hard for them to get back into those labs after they give birth. It's already very difficult for them to have gotten there in the first place, but after they've given birth, it makes it seem like these environments are not facilitative for families. So we take that into account as well. And also, when women do re-enter the workforce, we have to know that, there are two, a marriage is usually a partnership, the man and the woman. If they're both working parents, you find a way to manage so that one day the woman picks up the children. So it's also at home, at the functionality of home, where and in the family, where the woman and the men can share the duties, but also in the workplace, knowing that women have specific needs during and after pregnancy. So make that working environment facilitative for that as well, and give equal opportunity in institutions for both men and women to be able to do child rearing. I know in international organizations, for example, I've worked before at the UN for a while. I know they have both maternity and paternity leave. So having those as well in the private sector, that will also facilitate more comfort for women when they're actually at work, and more productivity. Because if they're at work and they're thinking about duties pertaining to their family, they're not going to function in the workplace and be as efficient and effective at undertaking projects. Now, because of COVID-19, we have more people at home, so the environment is a little bit more, I would say, complex depending on your situation, but it allows for more participation. So having flexible working hours where it's dual or hybrid, companies looked down on that before because they thought, if people were working from home, they weren't really working. And that we find is not actually true, having gone through now almost 8 months of for some places of remote working. We see that people are actually more productive and give more efficient work product when they are able to feel empowered at home, but also their mental health is taken into account, because they can now not worry so much about other aspects of family rearing. So having role models that look like them, having a facilitative environment that allows for them to thrive in that environment, but also addressing retention when the women actually do get there. In-person workplaces, having policies for sexual harassment, that a woman is just as capable as a man, and though we can be emotional, we do make very good decisions, and we see that reflected in the women leaders across the globe now. Jacinda Ardern, Mia Motley, you have people all over. In Iceland, you have a young female leader as well. So places where women have led, you have seen those environments thriving. So let's make those environments more facilitative, more humanistic, and inclusive of the life cycle of a woman, and also to address the fact that we have brains that function and we do work as well.
Wow, what a passion for it. I could tell that you're passionate about it and you want to see more women leading. Harsha, what is your view on it? How could we do that?
Yes, I loved all the points, Hermina. I mean, like so well put. Absolutely, you can see how much passionate you are about this topic. So I think there are a couple of other things that I want to bring to the table besides the ones that Hermina brought. One was, there is this whole concept of apprenticeship, right? So, for example, um, you know now, for example, even within corporate America, I mean, I was reading the latest report around the status of the women in the workplace, as well as the status of women of color in the workplace. And so if you look at the statistics, the number of women have grown from like 17% to 23% over the last 5 years in the C-suite. And now this is all women. But when you look at the number of the growth of women of color, as well as women from marginalized populations, it's very sad. Like the numbers are really, really bad. And so if you try and figure out why it is, one is the hiring that happens or the promotions that happen for women in these leadership positions. Actually, there's a whole report around that where, I think it's from McKinsey and Company, or maybe from Lenin.org. It's called the Women in Workforce Report. But what it says there is that if you look at the hiring as well as the promotions model, for every 100 men that are hired or promoted, what's the number of women that are hired and promoted at different levels of the organization? So the good thing is, if you look at the individual contributor level, we are almost at par. I mean, I think for every 100 men that are hired, there is about 94 women that are hired. So it's not that bad in the tech field. Even as you go up the ladder at the C-suite as well as the executive VP and all that, we are in good shape. I mean, corporations are doing a really good job of getting more women hired in those positions. I think there was, in fact, in one of the rungs, for every 100 men, there were 109 women that were hired or promoted. So that's a good story there. However, the broken part is, it's called the broken first rung. So the promotion of women from individual contributors to that first level manager, that part is broken. So that's, like if you look at that study that is there, it shows how, like, for every 100 men that are promoted or hired, there's about 70 or 60 something women, right? So that's where one, to Hermina's point, the pipeline just reduces. And so, like, the number the talent that you have available to move them to the higher positions then suddenly becomes very low. And then, if you start looking at marginalized populations, then it's really, really bad. So then you start thinking, what does this mean? How do we go and hire for these positions? So that's where I feel like, we do go and look for like elite colleges, or we go and look for like, advanced degrees, etc. What we need to really be doing is offering apprenticeships in communities where disadvantaged women who cannot afford college are able to actually try and shadow somebody, or attend like a 6-week apprenticeship program where they learn some of these techniques while they are doing their job. So that's one thing. Or maybe even paid apprenticeships, that could be one. Second thing is, stop looking for such populations to get a point of like where they start, right? I mean, to Hermina's point, if they're not even at the table, then what do you do? So let's go and look for hiring outside the regular. Maybe we go to community colleges, or maybe we go and look at different universities, small like smaller universities or smaller colleges where you can get that. So that was the second thing that I think we need to make sure we look at, because it is our duty. It is our duty to make sure. I mean, again, if you think about it nowadays, I think about how we are developing AI, right? Artificial intelligence solutions. And we are kind of like, as an industry, figuring out what responsible AI means. What is responsible? What is ethical? if we don't have all populations there telling us what really is responsible and ethical is, then again, it'll be like the car seat problem. It'll be designed by a set of people who think that this is what responsible is, or who think that this is what ethical is. And so we will be doing humanity a disservice by not including these populations.
Harsha, we're going to continue with you because you mentioned artificial intelligence. And that brings me to the next question,
Okay.
because as you've been so long in technology, why not to just pick up your brain and see what is the latest game-changing trends in technology that you think that could create a shift in diversity and inclusion? And what are those innovative and revolutionary resources that you might know because you are every day doing this?
Oh yeah, yeah, I love that question. So so in terms of like the latest trends in technology, to my point, there is artificial intelligence, and you can see that I spoke a little bit about how it's important to be inclusive of all populations. The other population that I'd love to talk about is accessibility. In fact, Microsoft has this application called Seeing AI in the you can find it in the iPhone store, or Android store, or the Windows 10 store. But what it is an application that is designed that uses the cognitive services. So cognitive services, by that I mean vision, hearing, speech, etc. Right? And so it actually, when you point the device, your phone, to any object, it actually uses speech recognition and image recognition and cognitive services to tell you, I see a middle-aged girl, a woman who is smiling or who is distressed, or I see a dog that is whatever, white in color, that is wagging its tail, right? So we are able to now, we're at the point in technology where we are able to use what we call cognitive services to identify, and so bring together these populations. In fact, I think all organizations, in fact, this last month was the accessibility awareness month, and all everything that we do, I mean, there's transcription, for example, with our phone calls, there's translation, there is so for example, if you are not able to hear that well, then you can actually read through the required, whatever the other person is saying. And so I think with all these, I feel like technology is now going to help bring along those populations that were by default left behind. We were trying for a long time, but now it has become a lot more a part of the DNA. I also feel like even for women, this different perspective. The more diverse the team is, the more the better it is in terms of the product itself. But also there are statistics that say diverse companies, I mean, it's a no-brainer, they do 24% better than non-diverse companies. But racially diverse companies do 30 something percent better than the non-diverse companies, right? So I feel like it's a no-brainer. So the most important thing is for all companies as well as people to accept the fact that it's a no-brainer. It's only going to service everybody. I mean, there is so much in to do in technology, and there is so much opportunity up there. The piece of the pie, I guess, is so huge that there is place for everyone. So there's no need for anybody to feel threatened about it. In fact, it's just going to make our products look better, our products work better, and help us in solving those day-to-day problems.
I love this abundance, this abundance mentality mindset, that it is,
Yes.
it is cake for everybody. All of us, we could enjoy this pie.
Yeah.
So, Hermina, you are a master just doing strategic partnerships. You've been doing this, and I have basically watched you for several months. How do you do that? And my question is, if you can share with us, what is the importance of formulating partnerships with the stakeholders, with the private sector and civil society to facilitate inclusion through STEAM?
Sure. Thank you so much for that huge compliment. I think for me and for Aspire Artemis Foundation as well, what we focus on mostly is a human-centered approach. So what that means is we're authentic in our operations, we're transparent, and we formulate and we go into partnerships um, building off of what Harsha said, there's a piece of the pie for everyone. So we focus on comparative advantages as opposed to competitive advantages. So there's a situation where everyone wins. So when we formulate partnerships with diverse stakeholders, we go into the room thinking, how do we help our desired populations together? You're doing this, we're doing this, how can we do it together as a collective, and who can we bring together as well to the picture that can already advance our agendas? Because, when I said I worked before in coordination and collaboration, what I found was that organizations that were doing similar works, even though they had different mandates. So, for example, UNICEF focuses on children, and FAO focuses on food, but FAO also works with children, but bringing food to those populations. So how can those two organizations work on their joint agendas together to manage effectively a budget and have the project have more far-reaching implications than they would have thought doing it alone? And also what you do with that is you bring on capacity. So you have more human capacity, more brains in the room to solve challenges at a faster pace. So you become more efficient at getting the work done, and you serve a wider population. So maybe you would have targeted one country in the MENA region, but now you can target maybe 5 countries because you're collaborating together, working on both of your mandates and getting to the end goal in a very efficient way. So formulating partnership with diverse stakeholders, it's an essential part of providing opportunities for a wider array of individuals and companies to scale up their projects and to be able to reach farther out in the pipeline than they would have imagined. So I think that being authentic, being realistic, and bringing on your comparative advantages, what you do best. I'm not an astronaut, for example. I can never imagine to be an astronaut, so I will not pretend to tell an astronaut how to do their job. So I think that if we go into projects and partnerships in that way, so for example, you may both be working on development, but you have a specific mandate. You may be working in one country, maybe we can collaborate and have more countries, and then the end project or product, whatever it is, would be able to be more effective in the end. So I think we have, as human beings, have been told that, survival of the fittest for a very long time. You have to compete. Competition is great, but let's compete in ways that brings the project or product forward in an efficient and effective way, but not when it comes to the bottom line of getting people access to opportunities, or whether it's access to food or having a country that is thriving. So I think because I've worked in so many different positions. I've worked in the private sector. I've been a teacher. I've worked, in the public sector. I've worked with the grassroots. I think because I come from that background of having worked in those different environments, it has taught me something about people in general and what they want to accomplish. And I think I look at it through a people-centered, human-centered approach, and to just basically everyone wants to thrive. Everyone wants their bottom line to be met. How do we meet our bottom lines together so that we both have a win-win situation? In fact, there's this really effective training, momentum training, this organization that does professional development, and they have this red and black game. And so if you think about it in economics, it's similar to that of the prisoner's dilemma. Basically, they have in their training this game that they put people through, and in essence, it's a situation where you can either choose to win alone, or you can find a situation where both of you win. And in that situation where both people win, you find you are more effective and the results are more efficient.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, I'm very sad to say that we're coming to the end of this discussion, but I learned so much from you, and I could take on so many insights from this conversation that I think that all of the audience is gonna be so happy, like I am, with all of your insights. But before we leave, we need to think about a brighter future. So I would like that, what you would like to see in 5 years, what will be the perfect world? We are doing these conferences about entrepreneurship, and we want a more inclusive and diverse world. But we all have a dream about how we would love to see the world. And so I would like to hear from you, Hermina, what is that brighter future before we wrap up? Very short, because we have only half a minute, more or less, but please let us dream.
For me, what I'd like to see in the next 5 years, in the near future, in the far future, is to have more education, which is essential for entrepreneurship, for everything, mentorship and upskilling of diverse populations, especially underrepresented groups such as women and girls, so that they can get access to opportunities in technology and have the skills to basically thrive, and a support system which empowers and provides opportunities for future growth. I'd also like to see a world in which we compete less and collaborate more. And I think that leads to a lot more development. As you know, a civil servant and a former diplomat, I think that collaboration, conversation, and working together brings together more change and more peace than competition. Competition can be best placed when it is for a joint goal, or maybe getting another position, but you can definitely work more collaboratively together with teams within your environment, and even in sports, when people compete, at the end, when there's a winner, they shake hands. So competition can also be facilitative to respect and dignity as well. So a world with dignity is what I think I would like to see.
Harsha, just inspire us. What do you see in the brighter future that we have in front of us in 5 years?
Yes, I think there is this word called Ubuntu by Nelson Mandela, and it means I am because you are. Right. I mean, there is a lot of things, and I'm going to read this part. But basically, there will be gender inequality, poverty, violence, etc., and that happens at the global scale. And as a society, it's our responsibility to make sure that we create a world that is fair and inclusive, that recognizes interconnectivity, that allows flexible work, that provides accessibility and childcare, so that our daughters, our mothers, our sisters, our the wives and everybody have an equal opportunity. And there should be a new normal that is created, where there is more support at home as well as at work. And it basically allows all women to pursue their dreams without bias and without limitations and without fear. And if we do this, we as a society will be better. And to my earlier point, there is enough, I really am because you are. I mean, we really need to take this seriously. And if we do this, then I can totally see that new normal, which is a very inclusive world.
I really want to live in this world that you both envision. And I'm so inspired by you that I only could say and pray that we have the opportunity to just lift you up in positions of leadership where your vision could be shared with the world. Because to conclude, we have realized how STEM is really on service of humanity. And you both have demonstrated by your comments how humanist you are and how do you care about humanity and how through entrepreneurship in the STEAM area we could achieve that goal. So thank you so much for being with me today. And thank you also for your audience. And again, I want to reiterate my thank you to the European Commission and of course the Foundation Incyde and all of the other partners. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Gracias para todo.